Welcome, Sonia. Thank you so much for taking out time for your busy schedule. The geographical boundaries have stopped mattering, and digital has enabled us to talk so seamlessly in a virtual mode. So, today, let's talk about digital technologies. The past couple of years have been unprecedented. Most organizations had to adopt digital for sustenance and growth. Cloud, which enabled resilient deliveries from multiple locations,
Mm.
adoption of AI/ML for cost savings. We've all come a long way.
So,
And multiple waves of corona means, it made all of us realize that we need to plan ahead.
yep.
All of this, all of us have our own personal favorites when it comes to the technologies, which we believe are going to shape the future. What,
Mhm.
according to you, are the technologies or products that you feel are going to shape 2022 onwards?
Sure. Firstly, Shalini and team, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join you guys. So, yeah, before I share a few areas which I am sort of excited about and watching, I did want to say that while the pandemic has created a lot of stress and disrupted our lives in ways that we could never imagine, it's contributed to digital innovation at an unprecedented pace. As organizations, companies have navigated through the ups and downs of what was brought upon us back in 2020, there were some immediate responses, of course, we had to adopt. But in the longer run, what we've learned is that those changes that happened or the innovation that happened is also contributing now to future plans. In other words, and I think there's a lot of data as well as research around it, the pandemic has increased the pace of digital transformation exponentially rather than in an organic or a linear manner the way it was happening earlier. Another point that I wanted to make was that digital transformation specifically used to be once upon a time considered the domain of the chief information officer or the IT department. It's now becoming getting way more executive level attention from the leaders themselves. You know, so when it comes to, you asked me about what I am excited in 2022, there's definitely that continued shift towards a cloud first mindset, which we all, whether it's in all aspects of business, it could be in supply chain management, human resources, finances, CRMs, and pretty much all line of business. That said, a few areas that I am personally excited about and watching as well as adopting in my own journey, I'm going to talk about those. And I should caveat my response by saying that some of the trends that I'm going to talk about may not sound very, very cool or sexy, but in my mind, they are very critical to digital transformation. And they're also pretty much foundational to the new reality of the world that we are living in now.
Yeah.
The first of those, that I have seen a lot of change and growth is in security. For the most part, over the years, security and compliance were basically sort of necessary evils and almost annoying and time consuming processes that slowed down some of the innovative and cool work we used to be doing. However, during the pandemic, security has taken a completely different turn, and it's become super key to ensuring privacy as well as protection of our data, employee data, customer data, as well as company assets. I have seen a huge ramp in security related innovations that make our digital world more, safe, whether it is MFA, that's multi-factor authentication, or it's biometric technologies or extensive use of VPN. And that's going to continue. There is one after the other innovation that's happening in the security space. Secondly, on the security side, there's also a shift from it being a remediation kind of a function where security used to take over after an attack had happened to now it's become a more strategic and a proactive function where the cooler technologies like AI and ML come into play, because they help you recognize the signs of an attack and eliminate or reduce your risks. And thirdly, and this is something I'm not personally very familiar with, but because I read a lot, so I was reading about this. There's an interesting shift to what's now called the DevSecOps model instead of the DevOps model, where security, reliability, compliance, all of these are now being built into every aspect of your agile sprints rather than being, what we've been traditionally used to. That's at the end of a development process or more like a checkbox exercise at the end. So those are some key things for security that I'm watching out on.
Yeah.
The second one, and this came, from a few recent trainings as well as, a lot of education that we get at Microsoft about accessibility. And I was thinking, well, there is a ton of opportunity out there in the accessibility world to innovate. And it's not just innovation, it's a necessity now. In a world where you have 1.3 billion people who have some or the other form of disability, and another 2 billion plus people who are their family members or close associates who are impacted, indirectly with that person's disability. And therefore, it becomes super important to be more focused, especially in our digital work from home world. Imagine us being in this kind of a meeting and one of us having a disability related to, let's say, hearing, and not having, closed captions, not being able to understand anything, how frustrating that could be. And, how much companies would you lose as opportunity when these kind of people are not able to contribute to organizations, to our economy. So very, very critical. Similarly, one aspect is the innovation in terms of accessibility in our products. For example, Teams, the tool that we are using right now. Second is accessibility is also important in our content, in whatever we are building, and also in our day-to-day behaviors. I mean, we are getting training even from the perspective of how to address or talk to somebody that is differently abled. We no longer, for example, say differently disabled. We say differently abled. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there are many of these kind of examples. So as part of digital transformation efforts, every industry, I would say, has a long way to go to ensure successful implementation of accessibility technologies, as well as, adoption of new behaviors and new skills. And last but not the least, letting go of some ingrained bad practices over the years or centuries, rather, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, if I read you correctly, there is a enhanced focus that you feel that we all should put on
Absolutely.
including and carrying everybody together. A sort
Yes,
of inclusivity that has to be the focus, and digital with a difference is what you're talking about.
that is correct.
Bridging the gap between haves and have-nots and ensuring that everybody moves forward in their own way.
You nailed it. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And we also have that kind of mandate, and that, of course, has to be, digital with a difference has to be the tagline for each of us who has a potential to make an impact in our own small way.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I love the phrase that you use, digital with a difference. Nice. I'm going to copy it.
Absolutely. Uh,
Yeah, nice.
I mean, and to be honest, I mean, that's what digital has brought to the forefront, enriching the lives of people. All the
Yeah,
innovations that are happening are not focused towards business as usual or enhancing the
yes,
business only. A lot of it is about experience,
true.
improving experience of people who are using these technologies. And I completely agree with what your narrative is and what your focus areas are.
Yeah.
Cloud, of course, is a priority for all of us, and
Mhm.
data has helped us in a big way because we've had long-standing relationships with our customers. All that data needs to be used and leveraged to draw insights, to create value, to enrich lives of people, to
Yeah.
create new business pipelines for them as well, so that they
Yeah.
can make an impact. And that's what all of us are betting on. Any opinion on blockchain, cryptocurrency, all of those as well?
Not really. I honestly haven't really gone way too much into details of those. But one area which I wanted to talk about was specifically related to AI,
Yeah.
and you know, and a specific aspect of AI, which is about more regulation in the world of AI. I mean, as we all know, as the use of AI is increasing, the lack of regulation is starting to show areas where it's being misused. It's probably undermining basic human rights such as privacy and protection of our personal data. And also another super important aspect, which here in US is being discussed a lot, is how poorly regulated or unethical AI or AI with a bias can reinforce inherent biases. For example, biases against women, biases against people of color. So I have been, following some and reading up about a bit about what's called regulated AI, and I learned that I actually was surprised to learn that Europe is way ahead of the world when it comes to AI legislation. For example, something as simple as that AI is not going to be allowed to provide real-time and remote biometric identification in public places unless it's specifically required for some safety scenarios by law enforcement. Whereas in US, we have I'd say, very loose regulations or none at all.
Yeah,
And on the other hand, there's also a debate going on whether AI should be regulated or is it going to kill innovation. So that's one more very interesting aspect of it. But
no,
what
good.
I believe is that scientists, engineers, data scientists, they will have to exercise and exert some form of self-censorship in terms of how they're using their algorithms, how they are evaluating the data, and how they're truly eventually adjusting to remove those biases and misuse. So, in
Absolutely.
my mind, that's a very, very interesting area to follow in the coming years.
No, and interesting that you touched upon this topic because we are a European organization, and for us, it's extremely important. You touched upon two
Yeah.
nuances, cybersecurity and AI, and both of them are extremely important in the current context. AI, just touching upon it, we took cognizance of the point that you're raising. And for
Mhm.
us, one of our major convictions in AI space is trust and ethics. And as you rightly said, if the data itself is biased, AI output will be biased and enhanced more so because the algorithms bring their own nuances. And hence, that's something that needs to be monitored. And just wanted to share with you that we as an organization are a part of a consortium called Confiance.ai, which is,
Okay.
sponsored by the government. It's a private public partnership. A lot of organizations like Airbus, Renault, us, and the French government are a part of it. And the English literal translation of confiance is trust. So the idea is to build and authenticate algorithms which
Yeah.
ensure that there is no bias. Because that's a very relevant point that you made. And you talked about the loans. I was working on loans and origination system. And I was reading stats that wherever they've used AI algorithms, women's, the
Yes.
success of getting a loan is minimized in the
Yes.
same family, you know,
Wow.
which was such a big surprise because the income of the family is same, but if the man is applying, he's getting it. So those were the points that sort of raised their hackers, and we started working on these kind of points, and it's brought it to the forefront. And very relevant points that we are getting an opportunity to discuss today.
Yeah.
One major factor that I personally feel is digital is not pure tech. You were also talking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of it is culture, a lot of it is people, processes, all of it combines together along with tech and business to actually build an impact. But in my personal opinion, culture is a point which actually can make or mar a particular initiative because, if you may have the best solution, but if nobody is using it, there is no point in actually having it.
Yep.
And for me, that is the crux of digital adoption. Your point, your thoughts on it, because you've also seen that journey.
Yeah, I actually couldn't agree more with you on this. You know, a common misconception amongst a lot of people, a lot of organizations is that if a company upgrades its technology, for example, such as moving its data and computing power from on-prem to the cloud, that's digital transformation. However, the reality is that technology, whether it's AI or ML or data analytics or even any cool apps that companies are creating, it's merely an enabler. True transformation only comes by transforming the mindsets
Mm.
and skill sets of both leaders, as well as, more importantly, I would say the managers and the employees who are on the ground really doing the stuff, who are doing the work. So, from my experience and what I've been learning within our organization, as we've been going through our own digital transformation journey, some things which I consider as key to digital transformation from a culture perspective are number one is customer obsession. And by customer obsession, I mean, deep efforts to understand a customer's experience as well as their journey through that entire phase when you are working with a customer, whether it's when you are marketing or selling, whether when they're using your product and they are, experiencing the interface. And I'm talking maybe because I'm from a software world, I tend to think of, when I say product, I tend to think of software products. So, I mean, the UI of a product, or even during post-sales experiences, such as, sub customer support or any operational or deployment needs that they may have. Here's where the digital transformation customer experience becomes super deeply connected. As you improve your, data integration and your systems connectivity, your different systems are connected because you are on your DT journey. The customer's journey also in the process becomes more seamless. And I'll give an example, and this is from a real world experience. When you build a more robust and a more organized master customer database, especially in huge conglomerates, big companies, rather than having 15 sources of truth related to your customer, you have one source of truth, or that at least that one source which is combining data from all of those. The customer service teams can address customer needs more quickly. Customer wait times can be reduced. The support experience can get better, and overall, your customer satisfaction gets better. And of course, in the process, you've saved tons of corporate time. Another example is, when you take some time to, you are truly customer obsessed and you take time to understand each part of your customer's journey. It's way easier to identify their pain points and build experiences that are coherent rather than, and really doing what the customer needs rather than what we think, oh, I'm very innovative or my company is very,
Yeah.
innovative and we are going to build that. And this for us has been a huge journey coming from a place where, we used to think about, hey, we are a technology company, we've done innovation, so we know what our customer needs. But no, we were wrong. The
Yeah.
customer knows what they need. We don't know what they need. We have to take time to understand that. And that's a very, very important cultural shift in my mind.
And so true, agility has to come both in the way we create the products for customers, because they have to be a part of the journey. They
True.
cannot be, an end product that you actually pitch uh, to somebody. They have to be engaged. And I've realized that when customer is a part of the development of your particular journey, they actually are guiding the direction that you're trying to take. And that always helps adoption.
And in today's world, nothing could be, it could be, it is so true. Look at even regular purchases. When you and I purchase online, we
Yeah.
purchase, our dresses, our shoes, or whatever we do. We are constantly, putting in reviews and we are relying on those reviews. So as customers, how we are influencing what was originally only influenced via advertisements or marketing campaigns, it's a huge shift that's happening in this new
Absolutely.
digital world. Yeah.
Absolutely. And all the data you talked about, customer data. I
Mm,
mean, there is so much personalization happening in the B2C space.
mhm.
Every click of yours actually is monitored and actually
Yeah.
builds recommendation of the products that you get. And this is just, I'm talking about the buying patterns. If you map it to any customer experience, which could
Mhm.
be, a banking industry, a manufacturing industry,
Yeah.
all of it stitches together. So it's almost like a 360 degrees profile of a customer and building an experience for him around his choices, his
Mhm.
experience. And, a lot of adoption of digital works towards digital literacy as well.
Yeah.
The sales folks understanding what to talk about,
Mm.
enlightening them about the journey, not talking tech, talking business and what
Talking
can be
business.
done. The art of
Talking the customers perspective of it. And I'd
exactly.
say not just the salespeople, we have seen a huge shift where our product managers, even our software engineers, are encouraged to think the customer's experience rather than just think of their code. Yeah.
Exactly. And all
Yeah.
of it is stitching together in a way,
Yes.
evolving disparately but converging.
Correct.
Agile, DevSecOps, customer experience being the focus.
Mhm.
A new buzzword that's come is customer data platforms,
Oh
which
yeah,
is,
CDPs. Yeah.
yes, it is. And that's a big advancement because it's providing almost like an omni-channel orchestration. You send a mail, you carry over the context to a phone call, and then you may carry it over to a virtual assistant, and it's seamless. And that's the beauty
Absolutely.
of technology.
Funny
And
you talk about it. It's one of the key projects we are working on right now.
yeah, yeah, in fact, and I brought it up because I know Microsoft is betting big on that in its
Yeah,
own way.
yeah.
Brilliant. One
So,
more point.
couple things, a couple other things related to culture that I wanted to just quickly touch upon, and I know we are going to run out of time probably. Second one is related to experimentation, and that's a complete, huge mindset change, which requires organizations to stop making assumptions about customers, rather work with what we call as hypothesis, experiment, and then pivot based on the data, the analytics, the insights that those experiments throw out. And that also, in my experience, has been a big cultural shift that is still happening. It is, I won't say it's happened because people, and that brings me to the next point in in cultural change, is experiments don't happen because there's that fear of failure.
I was
And that,
about to touch upon that,
yeah. So
failure.
yeah, if you guys have read Satya Nadella's book, Hit Refresh, he talks
I did.
about, a fail fast mindset, and that's something I remember having multiple conversations with my team, which I inherited when I joined the company, and, really encouraging them that, guys, I have your back. If you fail, I need you to go fast. I need you to experiment. I need you to study the data. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's fine. You have to stop worrying that you're going to lose your job, or you are not the right person to share new ideas, because everybody has to bring ideas without that fear of ridicule or failure. That's huge change again from a cultural perspective.
I agree with you. And digital cannot survive with the risk of failure. So it completely resonates with me because while we were working on the digital piece and we were setting up the team, that was
Mhm,
one thing that I absolutely used to abide by.
mhm,
No finger pointing. Let's have failures and celebrate failures because they taught us a lot. In fact, the first asset that I created, which was, we ideated and created it, and I should not be using the word I because it's all of us together. It
mhm.
was, I personally, technologically, it was way ahead of its time, built to scale, designed to scale, very secure, could support 50,000 people and so on. But it wasn't adopted. And we realized the incredible part that we missed, which was the customer engagement throughout the development life cycle.
Wow.
And that failure, which was, around 9 years back, taught us how to develop anything further. And today we stand celebrating failures, fail fast,
Yeah.
don't get married to any algorithm, don't get married to any product, try it out. It works, it works. Technology is a changing goalpost. We evolve, we ideate. And to be honest, sharing with you, Sonia, we've created a bunch of accelerators which have helped us capture the market in our own way. And it's
Mhm.
absolutely fantastic, the journey that we've been taking for the past few years. So, acceptance of failure, building a risk-taking culture is inherent to any digital innovation. I
It
couldn't agree with you more on that aspect. Coming to the pandemic, I know we've talked a lot about this, but just the mere fact that all of us are working from home,
is.
there are fuzzy boundaries between personal and professional time. And I
Yeah.
know you, as a woman leader, must be tackling all those issues day in and day out. What is your mantra to balance it out?
Oh, well, firstly, I think I should acknowledge that it is probably one of the most talked about topics in the last 2 years, and rightly so. And secondly, I also want to say that there is no magic wand or magic solution that anybody has found, whether it is large corporations or startups or even single entrepreneurs, people are struggling. Yeah. And in fact, for us at this point, work-life balance or WLB as we call it, is one of the key initiatives we are working on as a team because we have a ton of feedback on this topic from our employees. But yeah, I'm happy to share a few things that have worked for me and or that I see are good solutions, both as a manager and as an employee. And I want to talk about both different roles because obviously I wear two different hats. One, I'm a manager, a leader of people, and secondly, as an employee, as an individual, how do I do it for myself too? So as a manager, I think one of the most key things is we have to strive to build an environment where we are making it clear to people that we measure their performance based on business impact and teamwork collaboration rather than on visibility or the number of hours somebody's online or the number of emails somebody sends or the time of the day when they send an email saying, oh, 4 a.m. email, wow, how hardworking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's an important message for leadership to impart to people.
Yeah.
Secondly, we have been doing explicit and often very repetitive communication, and this is important repetitive communication, reminding people that the leadership supports flexible work schedules that best fit each individual as well as team. And
Yeah.
I'll take an example of my own team. I have a diverse team with different needs. 50% of the people on my team, luckily, are women. Several of them are parents of young children, and those children are stuck at home these days.
Yeah.
A couple of people have aging parents, including myself, people who have local parents, people like me who are remote givers to parents that live like 10,000 miles away in India. Yeah. Additionally, teams are getting more and more geographically distributed as well. I've had people that have relocated to other parts of the country. So, as a manager and a leader, it's my responsibility to make sure that I respect those differences,
Yeah.
differences in the sense that everybody has a different need at a different point of time. And I give people that time and space with trust built in that they are going to do their job. And, it's not just their visibility that's going to impact their performance. And that is definitely over communication because employees do not believe it. If you say once and you think they believe, they don't believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree
Thirdly,
with you.
yeah.
Trust is extremely important. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thirdly, just coming to a couple very practical ideas that we're trying to implement, what we call as team agreements.
Yeah.
Is something that everybody in the team discusses and then commits to follow unless there's an emergency. Some examples are we have decided cross-team collaboration hours, aka meeting hours. For
Yeah.
example, in our org, we are saying 9 a.m. to 12 noon, and then 1 to 3 p.m. are the collaboration hours. Everything before, after, in between is left to the employee to figure how they want to use that time. They are doing focus work, they are having lunch, they are doing something for their children, etc., whatever it is.
Yeah.
Then we are a global organization. So we've established 2 days a week with 2-hour windows for that cross geo collaboration.
Yeah. That's it.
Specifically coming to India, we have a big team in India. So we're said no meetings on Friday mornings, which is our Friday morning, with our teams in India. Even if I say, oh, I want to have a 6 a.m. meeting on my Friday morning, because
Yeah.
it's India's Friday, it's their weekend, no meetings. So clear rule.
Yeah.
Then we have meeting free Fridays. Today wasn't my meeting free Friday, or at least the second half of Fridays are meeting free. So that's given huge relief to people. And lastly, we are trying to build a very consistent rhythm of business because, lack of an ROB overwhelms people. People do not know when to expect what, and everybody's scrambling all the time. At least that's how it happens in big corporations. And I'm sure you probably have a similar experience
Yeah.
when there is no consistency or no predictability to your ROB. So
Yeah.
those are simple, they sound very simple, but they take time to implement, and it takes time and reinforcement from managers and leaders to make sure that people feel comfortable using those sort of boundaries or agreements. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Coming to
Then
the personal, sorry,
yeah.
you were saying
So,
something, so go
yeah,
ahead.
I was going to talk about some personal rituals I've established for myself, and
Yeah.
also some which I do. I mean, because I want to be a good role model for my team as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
in terms of personal rituals, a couple things that I've done is I start my mornings with a 5-minute meditation that keeps me grounded.
Yeah.
I bought myself a notepad which has a format of a time box to-do list. So I built that, and I also put my buffer time boxes in between because I know there are going to be emergencies always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then
Absolutely.
this one you're going to laugh at. I have a mini ritual for getting ready in the morning. and a mini ritual when I come down the stairs, which that's my going to office. I'm going to office and I make myself camera ready. I never wear my PJs because if I'm in my PJs, my brain thinks I'm not working. So then my work and life boundary just becomes very fuzzy and I end the day frustrated with myself and tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can.
Similarly, like evening boundaries as well. When I actually take my laptop, I shut it down. I close the lid, like I'm done. Of course, I have to at 10 p.m. I take my laptop, do my a little bit of email, etc. But I give myself that break of a few hours, and that's super important.
And those are great thoughts that you've shared, in fact. The PJs one, especially because I do know of people who put on a blazer over shorts while attending calls. Sometimes it does put you in an informal mode, and you might be having an external engagement, and that sort of carries over, your mindset in a way
Yeah. I mean, at
gets.
least that's how my brain works. Yeah. Then
Yeah.
I also should add, since we are using technology, we should all try to see what power technology gives us on little things. For example, Outlook allows me these days to schedule mini breaks. It reminds me, I think I get an email every Saturday, probably. I don't remember which day it is. It says, hey, do you want me to schedule mini breaks and focus times? And I just click yes. It just goes to my calendar and schedules those. That's been amazing because that means that people cannot throw random meetings on my calendar. It doesn't block my whole calendar, but it gives me those chunks of focus time. So otherwise, I would never do it. I'd never take time on a Sunday to block my focus time for the next entire week. Outlook does a great job of it. Secondly, Teams, at least in our company, is now integrated. We have a partnership with Headspace. So at the end of the day, we get, when it's technically the end of the day, the 5 p.m. kind of timeline, Teams gives me a message saying, hey, would you like to do a 5-minute wind down meditation? So that's the power of technology, which helps you unwind. It reminds you it's the end of the day. It also gives me a nice reminder saying, hey, how was your day? Is there somebody who did amazing? And would you like to send them a little kudos? So I often send kudos
Great
to people.
thought. And that's
Yeah.
almost like positive affirmation, both
Yes.
for yourself and for your team.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. How
And
about
these.
you? What kind of practices do you use? I mean, you're in a similar position as mine, and I think you work cross geographies. So, what do you do to maintain your work-life balance?
So a lot of stuff. In fact, I got into a lot of physical activity over the past 2 years.
Oh,
I started with, and I keep changing it, varying it. I started with yoga. Of course, meditation is a must. 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes while sleeping. I'm quite spiritual as well, so a good amount of reading and inward-looking stuff has started happening over the past couple of years. I got into running. So
oh
I
wow.
run, yeah, I run almost 10 kilometers a day, and that helps me unwind.
Okay. We should have a conversation about it because I have also started running, but I'm nowhere close to your 10 kilometers.
No, and to be honest, Sonia, it's been a journey, and you know that you've seen me through 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
From the time where we would just sit and code to now, I realized health is extremely important. So a
It
lot
is.
of focus has shifted to staying fit because it's helped me realize that it helps my concentration as well and helps me be at peace. So
Mhm.
that run when I'm doing, it's my time.
Mm.
I'm looking inwards, I'm focusing. Though your body is sort of running, you are concentrating on one step at a time, which is, I mean, I
It,
don't know whether I'm able
it's
to share that passion or
almost
not.
meditation in many ways.
Yeah, a
I
lot
do
like
I do
that.
weightlifting, so I'm a believer in strength training. So when I'm lifting a weight, the very act of doing that, to me, that's a meditation. It's a very meditative act. I'm focusing on the muscles that are impacted by that particular movement or the muscles that are taking the entire load of that weight.
No, and in fact, it's it's
Yeah,
it's a recipe that I share with everybody.
yeah.
To transform yourself has to be the mantra today because that's
Absolutely.
what's going to help you sustain in the new world. Um, I've known you for a long time. You've been a fantastic daughter, wife, mother, and now mother-in-law. There are a lot of women who must be seeing this fireside chat How have you been able to balance these two roles, multiple roles? Two roles I wanted to talk about, personal and professional. You've aced both of them. I'm sure you must have had challenges on the way. I would
Absolutely.
love for you to share that, because if your journey can inspire a lot of people to stay relevant and try to aim for the stars. Absolutely. Over to you.
Yeah, of course. I'm not sure, Shalini, if I have a secret recipe or, whether I've maybe just been fortunate to be able to find and build those good support systems. And also, I should say, good managers all through my life who have supported me during times of, personal crisis.
Yeah.
But that said, as a woman and as a mother, a few things that have worked for me. First of all, I had this realization when I was a young mother, probably, maybe when the kids were 2, 3 years old or something, that I cannot be perfect in all my roles. So at different times of my life, I learned to prioritize, and here's a very personal example. For example, one area where I let go of perfection as a young mother and all the way till the girls were teenagers was to be a perfect homemaker who's going to have a super well kept house like my homemaker friends used to. And
Yeah.
I would have an inferiority complex when I would visit them. I gave up on that. It's like, I cannot do it." Yeah. Another area where I stopped being hard on myself, and I know a lot of women are hard on themselves, especially in India, perhaps, is not being able to cook elaborate meals every day. And I set that expectation with
Fair
my
enough.
husband and my in laws and my kids,
Yeah.
everybody. Not that I'm a bad cook, but I just did not have time. There was a point when I felt like I needed to focus on two things, two key things. One was my daughters when early stages of their school life. I felt like I wanted to help them establish a solid foundation of education. So I focused on their studies, their activities, and my career because I was mid career and I knew I was poised for big growth. I didn't want to compromise on either. So housework and some of this stuff was something I did. I deprioritized in some ways. Then I was thinking back on my time in India, since I worked in India for almost 20 years before I moved to US. You know, I started to think of my time as money. And one example of that was about 22, maybe 23 years back, rather, when my younger daughter was born, I invested in a driver. Back then, people didn't have drivers. Nowadays, I think it's very common. I invested because I calculated how my time, that was my 1.5 hours of commute one way, yeah, and total about 2.5 to 3 hours back and forth, how that converted to money. And if I pay a driver X amount, how much can I achieve in that much time? And you
Yeah.
won't believe the number of emails I've written in my car or the number of decks or documents I've created. And my car also became what I used to call my mini library, which was used to learn to stay abreast, during the time when I used to go home and the girls were all over me. I had no time to learn or, even have any idea about what was going on in the technology world. So the car was my haven. And
Yeah.
that was a huge, big investment. I'd encourage women to put in that kind of personal investment for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that prioritization resonates with me as well. I mean, when the kids are young, all of us have prioritized that aspect, and then they later on picked it up. But one mantra that I understood from you is staying relevant, investing in yourself,
Yes,
upskilling to,
absolutely.
you know, it's like a marathon, the career. You may
Mhm.
have short spurts of speed, but you need to tone down and pace yourself to for the
Yes.
long haul. And that's something that I personally believe
Mm.
in, as a part of my career
Yeah.
mantra.
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. Learning is has been super important to me at any point of time, which is when I was jokingly giving the example of my car being my library. But honestly, it was. I mean, it really helped me, stay up to date and stay relevant in many areas which I otherwise did not have time for. And now, even in US, when I no longer the kids are no longer at home, but and I drive, I don't have a driver. I still have a lot of learning related stuff in my car. I get stuck in traffic. I'm waiting in a line somewhere. I'm always reading, listening, because that's the only way I can learn outside of
Absolutely.
course practicing. And lastly, one tip that I wanted to share, especially with women, and we talked about self-care a little bit already as an exercise and stuff. One other that I wanted to share was, I gave up on any kind of hesitation around focusing on mental health a long time back. So I have on and off worked with therapists, with counselors, mental health counselors, because that's really helped me, I think, maintain my resiliency in my long journey, both professionally as well as personally. So I would really encourage, and I hope that some of the stigma associated with mental health is now, lesser, especially in India. But with these changing times, especially in these strange times that we live in, I'd encourage everybody to use the, mental health resources that you have at your disposal.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for these tips. I'm sure the women in the audience must have picked up their own learnings from your journey. You've been a woman of substance, and I've really admired your journey. Thank you once again, Sonia, for taking out time. More power to you. And we would love to applaud your journey henceforth as well. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And likewise for me, you've been a powerful woman and a great role model for me as well. And thank you for having me. And thanks to your team for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Sonia.
Bye
Thanks.
bye. Thank you.
Bye.